Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. Faraz's crime couldn't be proven, so the order for his release came through. Madam called me to her room, gave me all of Faraz's belongings, and told me to go and release him. He's a strange fellow, she said. Every few days he ends up behind bars, and then somehow he gets released again. It seems he has quite a few connections. Otherwise, getting arrested repeatedly for murder and then being set free isn't normal. Madam was furious because every time this prisoner was involved, she had to put in a lot of effort. Repeatedly investigating so thoroughly, only for him to be honorably acquitted midway through, was starting to really annoy Madam. I picked up all of Faraz's things, glanced at them, and went to his cell. As soon as I handed him his belongings and told him he was honorably acquitted, a faint smile appeared on his face, as if he already knew he would be released. His smile greatly irritated me, but I controlled myself and asked, "Why are you smiling so much? Has the government given you some medal that you're so happy?" He replied, "Of course I was innocent. That's why I'm free. It's my right to be happy." He put his watch on his wrist, straightened his clothes, stood up, and took a step closer to me. "By the way, Faiza Sahiba, you are very beautiful. I think you should get married now." He said this with great politeness and respect, but it set my whole body on fire. The mere mention of marriage angered me. I had no desire to get married, nor had I ever thought about it. The negative impact of my parents' marriage still weighed heavily on me. They fought so much that they eventually divorced, and I paid the price by being handed over to my grandmother. My grandmother raised me in great hardship, and because of that, I worked very hard to get a job as a lady constable so I could stand on my own 2 feet and not need anyone's support. But whenever someone mentioned marriage or talked about it, I would get angry. After becoming self-reliant, I didn't want to rely on anyone else, and in my opinion, the bond of marriage was nothing more than a burden and a responsibility. Seeing the unpleasant expression that came over my face at the mention of marriage, he paused for a moment, surprised, and said, "Has someone broken your heart, Faiza Sahiba, that you're so angry?" Without a word, I stepped out of the cell, and he followed me out. He proudly greeted all the staff as he exited the police station premises, and involuntarily my gaze followed him far into the distance. Faraz Haider, aged 29, 4 murder charges. But each time he was honorably acquitted. He was handsome, tall, well-built, and extremely wealthy. He lacked nothing, so why was he killing his wives? This was the question that had been unsettling me for quite some time. After he left, I sat down with Constable Farzin, who smiled and asked, "Faraz has been released?" I just took a deep breath and said, "You'll see, one day his crime will surely be proven. I know very well he's the killer." Farzin replied, "Everyone knows, but the crime has to be proven for him to be punished, right? Who knows how he commits these murders that neither evidence nor witnesses are found against him? In a few days, he'll commit another murder and be back here, and we'll have to entertain him like this again." Farzin said this with a terribly exaggerated expression, and I laughed. Indeed, whenever Faraz was behind bars, we had to be very alert because his connections were so strong that if he experienced any discomfort, a call would come from above, and the entire police station would be reprimanded. Farzin continued, "If his murder could somehow be proven, then it would be fun." Hearing Farzin's words, I fell into thought. Indeed, if this case were solved, the person who solved it would receive great commendation, and a cunning criminal would also be caught. Seeing me deep in thought, Farzin laughed and said, "Why don't you marry him? It won't be easy to kill you, but his secret will surely be revealed." He picked up some files, finishing his thought, and went to Madam Mamustam, and I was completely startled. For some reason, his words resonated with me. I could not only catch a criminal, but also get an opportunity for promotion. I had been a lady constable for a long time, and now I wanted to get promoted and move forward. Farzin had probably said it as a joke, but his words had now settled in my heart. When my shift ended, I went to the area where Faraz's large house was located. I once again started talking to the neighbors, but everyone said he was a very good and refined person. They couldn't understand how his wives died on their wedding night. The neighbors certainly didn't suspect him at all. Then I secretly began to question his household staff, and they also stated that the Sahib master was very kind and brought his wives home with great affection. They also didn't know how their deaths occurred. Once again, after hearing the same answers to all my questions, I returned home. But the next day, I saw Faraz standing outside the police station. I was startled to see him, and he motioned for me to come closer. I approached him with surprise, and he smiled, saying, "What's the matter, Constable Sahiba? Have you started investigating against us again?" He was observing me with deep eyes, and I was shocked. He knew I was gathering information about him. Unable to respond, I quickly said, "Yes, one has to gather information before getting married, right? You don't just marry anyone like that." Hearing my words, he was surprised and stared at me with his large dark eyes. "Marriage?" he repeated. "Yesterday you were getting angry at the mention of marriage, and today you're talking about it." He looked at me with great disbelief. I smiled and said, "I'm a beautiful 25-year-old girl. I have a job. I stand on my own 2 feet. I have everything in life, just lacking a life partner. I'm thinking of getting married." "Oh," he said, "so why were you investigating me then?" He stood with his arms crossed, gazing at me intensely, and for some reason I felt nervous. There was a strange sharpness in his eyes, a heat in his gaze that made me feel my very being melting. "Well, for marriage you need a groom too, right? That's why I thought, why not marry a rich and educated man? And besides, you and I have a deep connection. We've known each other for a long time." I finished my sentence with a slow smile, and he just stared at me in astonishment. "You mean you want to marry me? In your eyes, I'm a killer, aren't I?" I laughed loudly at his words and said, "What does it matter what I understand? You haven't been proven a killer, nor have you been punished. So what anyone says or understands doesn't matter. You are a respected citizen, and you've been honorably acquitted. I believe marrying you will secure my future." He looked at me from head to toe and said he'd be happy to have a talented and capable police officer like me as his wife. "I have no objection to marrying you." He agreed so easily that I was astonished. Neither of us had anyone else around. He lived alone in his house. His only family was a younger brother who lived in another city. That's why he married me simply the very next day and then brought me to his large bungalow. I had informed Farzeen about this marriage because I knew that if he was a serial killer, he wouldn't change his nature and would definitely try to kill me. His 4 previous wives had been killed on their wedding night. I was sure he would do something similar to me on our wedding night. I sat in his room, dressed as a bride, with strange thoughts swirling in my mind. Sometimes I felt I had made the right decision, other times that I shouldn't have taken this risk. I had put my life on the line with my own hands. Either I would solve this case completely today, or I would lose my life. The coming time would decide that. A few moments passed and the room door opened. Faraz entered the room, locked the door, and took small steps toward me. With each step, my heart rate accelerated intensely. He sat down close to me and took out a gift for the Runumay unveiling ceremony, placing it on my hand. It was a beautiful watch that left me surprised. I had never thought a man would give a watch as a Runumay gift, but it was a valuable one. I was looking at the watch in amazement when Faraz's voice echoed. He was sitting very close and addressing me directly, saying, "Your time is about to change. That's why I've gifted you this watch. Before you, I also gifted a watch to every one of my wives." He smiled faintly as he said this, and I was convinced that he truly was a serial killer. He continued talking to me like this for a while, and then when he went to the washroom to change, I seized the opportunity. I quickly installed 2 or 3 small cameras in different places in the room. I had already informed Farzeen about them. Then Faraz came out of the washroom and said, "You changed too, Faiza. I will not trouble you at all tonight. Because I made a vow to offer Nawafil prayers, I'm going to the lounge. You can sleep peacefully. We'll meet in the morning." With that, he left, and I was left in thought, unsure of what would happen next or how he would make me his prey. He just left the room, saying he was going to pray. I changed my clothes and lay back on the bed, but sleep was miles away. I messaged Farzeen and told him everything. He was surprised too, saying, "No need to sleep, stay alert. He could attack at any moment. Such men are very cunning. I think he might have some mental issues. So much wealth, so much property, and he's alone. It's obvious a person can become psychological. Farzin only managed to scare me more. Still, I was a police officer. No one could attack me that easily. That thought reassured me, knowing I'd had training. Slowly, the clock hands moved forward, and the night passed. The watch my husband gave me for the Runamai was still on my wrist. Just like that, the Fajr Adhan sounded, and the morning sun rose. As soon as the sun's rays entered the room through the window, my heart found peace. The state of unease vanished. The tragedy that befell the 4 girls before me hadn't happened to me on my wedding night. I washed my face and hands, performed ablution, and then returned to the room to pray. But as I stepped into the room, my senses reeled because someone was sitting on the bed. His back was to me, but I quickly realized he wasn't my husband. It was someone else. At my rustle, he turned and looked at me, and I immediately understood it was my husband's younger brother because his face was exactly like my husband's. He smiled at me and said, "How are you, puppy?" Brother didn't even tell me about the wedding. I only found out when I suddenly returned that he got married again. I'm happy to see you alive. Otherwise, girls who marry brother usually become dear to Allah on the very first night. Laughing, he came closer and congratulated me with a bow. His words were quite strange, but I only thanked him. Then he said, "Talk to me for a bit. I need to go back soon. I came for something important." I quietly sat with him. He started telling me about himself, saying he studies at a big university in another city and doesn't feel at home in this city, which is why he rarely visits. I couldn't fully participate in any of my brother's weddings, he said. Then he put his hand in his pocket, pulled out a small box, and offered it to me, saying, "This is your wedding gift." Hearing him, I was surprised. If he didn't even know about our wedding, where did he get a gift? My mind raced. While I was thinking, I took the gift from his hand. As soon as I opened it, I was astonished because it was a very valuable locket. He smiled and said, "This is my mother's locket. When I found out my brother got married again, I thought, why not give my Bobby a keepsake from my mother this time?" He urged, "Put it on and show me how it looks." At his insistence, I put on the locket. He was happy to see it around my neck and with a smile said goodbye and left the room. As soon as he left, I breathed a sigh of relief. I had been suspecting him without reason. He was quite kind and treated me very politely. After he left, I performed my prayers and then sat on the bed, but I started to suffocate. It felt as if breathing was becoming difficult. I began to take deep breaths. Just then, my husband entered the room. He immediately saw my condition and called a doctor, but by the time the doctor arrived, my condition had worsened considerably. Breathing had become extremely difficult. The doctor examined me and said I had been given some kind of poison, which caused my condition. My husband panicked, saying, "If I take her to the hospital, I'll be in trouble again. Everyone will think I did something." I was suffocating, and he was worried about himself, though he was concerned for me too. But when the doctor said the danger was critical, he rushed me straight to the hospital. Farzin also learned of my deteriorating condition through the cameras and arrived at the hospital. Shortly after, the doctor began my treatment, and it was my inner strength that the poison hadn't harmed me too much. And all the poison was removed from my body before that could happen. Farzin had brought police officers with him and had my husband arrested. When I regained some consciousness, I learned that my husband was in police custody. Farzin stood before me, angrily saying, "You're unbelievable. Even knowing he was a serial killer, you married him, and now look at the state you're in." I shook my head in denial and said, "He didn't do anything. I don't know how the poison got into my body." Farzin explained, "The doctor said the poison was injected into your body with a small needle. It was either because of your police training or perhaps because you were mentally prepared for that night, which is why the poison didn't have a greater effect on you. Otherwise, an ordinary girl would have lost her life by now." Then, when the doctor mentioned the poison needle was in my neck, I instinctively recalled my brother-in-law's locket. That part of my neck where I wore the locket, the gift from my brother-in-law, was bruised and blue. I immediately told Farzin, and he was astonished. He then initiated action, and my brother-in-law was arrested. He had already set off to another city, but the police team apprehended him. He was interrogated for a long time, and when pressed, he finally confessed. and the case was solved. It wasn't Faraz who killed his wives, but his younger brother, who had become completely insane with hatred for his brother. Faraz knew his brother didn't like him, which is why he had arranged for him to live separately in another city. However, somehow he would get news of everything his elder brother did. Each time on the wedding night, he would quietly enter the bungalow through a hidden passage in Faraz's absence, go into his room and somehow kill his wife. The locket he gave me as a gift contained a poison needle, which, after pricking my neck, showed its effects after a short while. When Faraz learned about this, he himself was stunned. He hadn't realized his brother harbored so much hatred for him. Faraz and I both sat in front of Faraz's younger brother, Zubair, and he was confessing his sins, crying and saying that since childhood, their parents had given more importance to Faraz's brother than him. He was younger, so he was sent to boarding school. When he returned from boarding school, he was always compared to Faraz's brother, being told how responsible, educated, and capable Faraz was, and that he was useless. Slowly, hatred for my brother grew in my heart. When our parents passed away, everything fell into my brother's hands. Brother told me not to get involved in the business until I finished college and university, but to focus on my studies. Then he sent me to a big university in another city, and he himself took control of all the businesses. That's why I decided I would never let him live a peaceful life. Every time I heard about his marriage, I quietly came home and ruined his happiness. If brother didn't have so many connections, or if his character wasn't good, he would have been hanged by now, but it was his connections that always got him honorably acquitted. I thought that this time, if I killed a police officer, brother would surely be punished. But it was my bad luck that this time you survived, and my secret was exposed. Saying this, Zubair started crying, and Faraz also shed tears. Faraz said, "You are my younger brother. I love you. I didn't want to entangle you in responsibilities and keep you away from your studies. That's why I only stopped you from joining the business for some time. But I didn't know you would become so blind in the fire of hatred that you wouldn't know the difference between right and wrong. To take revenge on me, you took the lives of 4 innocent girls. Thank God Faiz's life was saved. Otherwise, I might never have forgiven myself. The guilt I feel, I can't even express it. Even though I didn't do anything wrong, everyone still looks at me with suspicion. I wish you had talked to me directly instead of doing all this. Then I would have given you your rights." Zubair, crying, pleaded with Faraz, "Brother, save me, otherwise I will be hanged." But Faraz had vowed not to save him because he had taken not 1 but 4 precious lives. And if I hadn't been taken to the hospital in time, my life might not have been saved either. Zubair's fate was to be decided by the court, and Faraz had returned home. Faraz apologized to me. He was very ashamed, and I was even more ashamed of myself for having considered him a criminal when he was truly innocent. I started a new married life with Faraz, after which I realized that I had always viewed the institution of marriage incorrectly. Marriage is not just about responsibility and burden. It also fills a person's life with different kinds of happiness. My married life taught me what a beautiful feeling it is to have a life partner. And at the same time, it became clear how detrimental it is if parents discriminate among their children or create an environment of competition among them. If Faraz's parents had not repeatedly given Zubair Faraz's example, had not told him that Faraz was better and more capable, then perhaps hatred for his own brother would not have developed in his heart. Instead, he would have loved his brother and would be living a good life today. Even minor mistakes in parental upbringing can sometimes lead to great loss, as happened with Zubair. Today, he is behind bars, his case is ongoing in court, and no one knows when and what punishment he will receive.